We are live, and thank you anyone who's already joining us right away. Excited to have you. Really quick before we jump into our indie author spotlight, I wanted to introduce ourselves. So, my name is Jessica Ann. If you guys aren't familiar with me, if you're joining from Erin or Oba's Substack, I'm an indie author myself. So, this was one of the ways I wanted to be able to give back to other indie authors in the community. I know self promotion is very hard for a lot of us, especially when all we want to be doing is creating and writing. Actually, being able to talk about our book, in front of other people is sometimes difficult to do. So this was kind of our way of being able to help spotlight other authors along their journeys, whether that is at the very idea stage or if they're already a published author. That's kind of why we're doing indie author spotlights. So, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jaylon, who's going to introduce herself and kind of like how you're connected to this
Sure.
and what you do as well here on Substack.
Thank you. So I'm Jaylon Gunduz. I am the representative of One Brilliant Art here. We call it OBA. And we are a story studio that specifically helps marginalized voices in the storytelling space be amplified so that people can own their voices and speak their truth even more powerfully. So we are always working with indie authors or authors who are struggling with self promotion. And again, it's very much just we love getting the opportunity to support people who are telling stories that will heal themselves and heal the world. Um, and we're super excited to have Erin with us today because I feel like her story is very much that. So I will pass it on to you, Erin, and let you introduce yourself and a little bit about what you write for.
Okay, I'm Erin O'Brien, and I just started writing on Substack a little less than a year ago. To give you a little background on me, I was an educator for almost 30 years. Um, and then I left teaching. I worked in the corporate world for about 5 years. And I walked away from that about a year ago and am now really focused on.
So did I.
Yeah. It was a good decision. It was a very scary decision at the time. Well, I mean, each of those decisions was scary because when you do something for almost 30 years, it's really hard to kind of separate the that from your personhood. It's like
Mhm.
it's such a big part of who you are. So that was difficult. I suppose that made it a little easier than walking away from the corporate position because I hadn't been doing that for decades. But so now I got my real estate license, so I also do that as sort of like a day job. But I'm also very focused right now on developing my writing.
Awesome.
So
So
tell us
do
a
you
little bit. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was going to say the exact same thing you are about to say.
I was gonna say, tell us more about what it is you write about on Substack. I know that your Substack is called Becoming Part Two, and you explained to us a little bit about what was behind that name but right before we started the live. But I'd love for our audience to have a chance to hear what your journey has been like and how writing has fit into that journey.
Sure. So the reason why I chose that name for my Substack is because there like just so much has changed, or I'll give myself a little more credit and say I have changed so much in my life in the last few years, and it was very um kind of unexpected. And so much happened so much more quickly than I could have anticipated. And I feel like I have done more living I just turned 56 a couple days ago. And thank you. And I feel like I have done so much more living since I turned 50 than at any other point in my life. And it has at times been really scary, but it has been really, really awesome. Um, if you had told me 20 years ago that this would be the decade of my life, that would really be like the standout time that I'm like, yeah, I really feel like a whole person for the first time. And I feel like I'm accomplishing things that are really important to me and things that I never thought I could do. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And so that's sort of the reason behind the title of my Substack. And that is a lot of what I write about. I think when I first conceptualized the Substack, I thought a little bit more broadly about what I might write about, and I do kind of deviate from my central focus sometimes, but my relationship with my husband is probably that's the main focus of what I write about in my Substack, because it's sort of everything else. I'm not going to say that was the starting point for everything, because it's not. It's the other way around. It's that all the things that I was changing in my life and all the things that I was working on kind of led me to that. Or I guess it's sort of like an hourglass. Like there were a lot of things that I did that got me to the point where I was ready for this relationship that I have with him. And then it also enabled me to branch out in all these different directions that I never could have anticipated. Because if you've looked at my Substack at all, you know that my husband is Cuban. He lives in Cuba. He does not speak English. When our relationship started, did not speak Spanish. Um, so, obviously there's like a whole lot there in terms of, things that we both had to figure out together, and all the things that we have to do to make that work, and all the ways that that has exposed me to just experiences that I just couldn't have ever anticipated.
Mhm. Wait, can I ask when you met your husband? And maybe it is on your Substack, but in case someone is new listening
Sure.
here.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I met him at the beginning of 2023.
Okay, awesome. And so you're writing a memoir, right?
Yes.
About so kind of separate from Substack, but tied to your writing here, right?
Yes.
About your love story?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Do you
Yeah.
have a
So
working title yet?
I I not really, like, I'm not certain.
Okay.
As I told you before this started, I really struggle with titles. So, to
Okay.
me, that's like people talk about the hardest part of writing, and I feel like most people say editing, and it's not. There's no part of the writing process that I dislike except coming up with a title. That's
Okay.
like my biggest challenge. The thing that keeps coming back to me is 3,000 kilometers, because it's something that my husband says all the time. Obviously, the whole rest of the world besides us is on the metric system. And so it is almost exactly 3,000 kilometers between Chicago and Kohimar, where he lives in Cuba. So that's kind of like the thing that keeps coming back to me, like that I have to work that into the title somehow. Because the separation that we're experiencing right now is an enormous aspect of our experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That's huge. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah.
I also agree that with the editing, it's like a lot of people say it's the hardest part, and I wouldn't say so, only because I enjoy it so much that I became an editor. That's what I
Mhm.
do for One Brilliant Arc. So it's actually like the part that I love. I love helping writers hone their message to be even more powerful, and really mine like what's underneath their story that
Uh-huh.
matters. But I also am very bad at titles, so I would agree with you that finding a title is the worst part of writing.
Yeah.
So, do you wanna know how I came up with it? So, the title for my book was I crowdsourced it.
Okay, so
I
That's a
I
great
put
idea.
it out, like, on, like, Instagram and Facebook. This was, like, super early on, like, when I was just getting started, like, launching my author career, and I had all of these working titles, and I could not decide on one, so I was just like, "I'm gonna see what people pick, like, what
Wow.
resonates with people," and that's how I ended up with Woven in Time for my novel.
Wow, that's
That's
awesome.
okay. This is actually gonna be really fun now. So anyone watching live right now, or if you watch the recording, as we talk more about Erin's story, if you have any suggestions for a memoir title, please put it in the chat, and we'll see if it
Perfect.
sparks some brainstorms here. You might be credited with titling her memoir.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. So, what is it about now that is making you decide that it's the time to write your memoir?
Well, I think, first of all, I have something to say. I think for the longest time, I mean, everybody has always told me that I was a really good writer. I've always known that I was good at I was always especially good at, like, factual writing, academic writing, like, analytical writing, like, that's always been a strength of mine. Um, and people have been saying to me throughout my life, "You should write, you should write, you should write." And so I kinda had it in the back of my mind. I always saw myself as a writer, but I wasn't writing anything, you know? It's like, other than, like, in my head. I mean, I was
Yeah.
writing in my head all the time, but I never actually made it a discipline to sit down and write for me. I wrote for others. I wrote for assignments. I wrote for work. I wrote when I was mentoring teachers. I wrote professional stuff. But I never really made it a habit and a discipline to write for me. And I think there were a couple of reasons for that. One is I didn't know myself very well. Um, I really didn't. And now that I feel like I do, I realize how much I didn't really know myself. And that makes it very hard to have a voice if you don't
Yeah,
if you're not kind of centered in your own self, And so now I feel so much more that I know me and I like me. And I have a very interesting story to tell. I mean, not that I didn't have interesting stories to tell before, but like my story now is like I have to tell this story. That's how I feel about it. Like it's so awesome and it was so life-changing that I just so want to share it.
I feel like this is like the theme that is developing in a lot of the indie authors we're talking to is this like women who are discovering like their voices and their agency and it's sad to say that so many women do grow up in our society where they don't know who they are for so much like I'm similar. I'm a little bit younger than you, but I'm turning 40 this year, and I can say like I feel like haven't really come into my own voice until this last year. And I feel like that's the same story that we're hearing with a lot of women on Substack and who are writing books now because they feel like they have something to say and they want to share it with the world. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that is finally happening. And our society needs so many
Yeah.
more women's voices being, telling stories, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. That's a really powerful thing. So I'm excited that, you're sharing your story with the world too.
Definitely. I think it's so fun to see, especially with the work that I do. I get to watch people find their voices as they
Mhm.
write. Was that your experience? Did you find that you were able to get to know yourself more through the act of writing, or was that like a separate journey for you?
Oh, I think I might have lost you. Are you still there?
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So yes, definitely, definitely, definitely. Like I can't believe how many times I sit down to write about something and by the time I'm done, it goes in a very different direction than what I thought I was sitting down to write about. And sometimes even sentences will come out of my brain and I'll go ahead and type them out and it's like I almost don't even know where that came from and then I go back and read it and I realize that's the center of what I'm trying to say. And so, developing the like I said, the discipline of writing every single day has really pulled a lot out of me that I didn't even necessarily know was there. And then I can go back and reflect on it and figure out what it means. And absolutely, the writing is a vehicle for getting to know my own self better.
It's so powerful.
And thank you everyone who is like following along and listening today. I just wanted to shout out like who's giving us all the hearts for women telling their stories in the world. So just thank you guys for listening and tuning in too.
Yeah, for sure. This is a great speaking of our audience and the people who have joined us here. Erin, who do you hope to reach with this story? Who are you writing this story for? Yourself, obviously, because that's part of the therapeutic act of writing a memoir. You first write the story that you need. But what is it that you hope that people who read your memoir are going to get from it?
I think that what I want people who read my work to know is that so much more is possible than you might believe. And that one of the things I've realized in the last few years was the extent to which I place limitations on myself. Even at times when I felt like it was something external that was placing limitations on me, I've recognized that in many cases it was really my decision as to how I responded to what was going on around me or how I interacted with other people. That's where a lot of the limits that I was working within came from, and that I had so many more choices than I realized that I did, and I feel so much more in charge of myself and my life and how I spend my time and what kind of experiences I have than I ever did in the past. And there are a lot of things that I had given up on, as I shared with you, maybe before we started the live, but I was saying that I kind of gave up. Like I had this moment of like giving up. Like like I said, I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I felt. And I just sort of confronted myself in the mirror and looked at everything that I was unhappy with and said, you know what, this is just what it is. Like and that moment of letting go of the struggle against that was what actually enabled me to start turning in different directions. And so much came out of that that was so valuable to me. And I think a lot about what if I really had totally given up. It was like there was something in me that wouldn't let me. Even when I thought that was my intent, like there was part of me that was like, no, 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 this is not happening, and kind of just pulled me back up. But what if I hadn't made the decisions I made, and what if I hadn't pursued the things I pursued? And there's so much that's been opened up to me now, and I guess I hope somebody will read that story and feel inspired by it, and maybe see more possibilities for themselves.
That's awesome. Can I ask a quick question, off our our planned questions? I'm curious, you mentioned too that you had left, kind of a corporate career because like before this, what can you say what that process was like and taking that leap kind of like again betting on yourself, betting that you would like figure it out and venturing into like a new career path that is more rewarding? Um,
So yeah, that actually happened in the middle.
okay.
Yeah, so that was only just a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Um, and it reached a point where I realized that that position that I was in was not compatible with where my life was going.
Mhm.
It just wasn't. It was a choice between continuing to pursue that particular career or continuing to pursue my life. And I think had it happened 10 years earlier, I would have felt that there really wasn't a choice, that the career was mandatory. Um, and I just was at a place where I was like, it's not optional. My life is not optional. Like this is what I need to do in order to continue living the life that I want to live. And I mean, it was terrifying because, you lose your benefits and you lose your paycheck every 2 weeks and you lose your identity to a certain extent. I didn't have a title anymore. If somebody asked me, what do you do? I didn't have an answer. Um, and, so it was very scary at first, but I did figure it out. So I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Um, but I have a lot more confidence now that I can find ways to make things work.
Yeah. I feel like more and more people are doing that, realizing that they don't wanna just work their entire lives for
Uh-huh.
someone else or doing something they don't enjoy. It's like choosing life right now rather than delaying it, thinking, I might retire. I mean, if you're in like my generation, like I feel like anyone my age and younger, pretty much retirement isn't guaranteed anyways. So you might as well enjoy your life now.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I was very fortunate in that I have a pension.
Mhm.
And 2 weeks after I walked away from my corporate position, I became eligible to take my pension.
Well,
So,
that's awesome.
that's a good. I mean, I took a penalty because I took it early, but
Yeah.
I was like, I need to solve a now problem right now. So I wasn't worried about the 5 years from now when my pension maybe would be a little bigger. Like I need to get through right now.
Mhm.
So I just went ahead and took the penalty on it, and that gives me kind of a a floor, a ceiling.
Yeah.
There's something there that shows up every month. So, I mean that did make it more workable for me. Although if I hadn't had that, I would have figured something else out.
Yeah.
you know, I
Exactly.
it's just like I said, it was the idea that my life was not optional and it was not
Mhm.
negotiable. And, I think the biggest thing for me was the feeling of my time belonging to someone else before it belonged to me. That was probably the biggest thing that caused me to walk away.
Mhm.
You spoke to something that I think is a message that more people need to hear. It's a message that we've been trying to tell writers and storytellers out there. But your moment of almost giving up looking in the mirror became a moment of radical self-acceptance where you just accepted the way you were and started listening more to yourself.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's kind of the message that your story is now extending to other people to say, you know, when you are real and you are honest and you accept yourself for who you are, now you can start telling your story authentically and you can start living in that authenticity instead of living in the identity that someone else gave you, whether
Uh-huh.
it's through a corporate career or, um, you know, whatever it may be, the box that someone handed to you and said, fit yourself into here. Uh, and I think that that's so powerful. And that's really where powerful writing comes from, too, because we can only write something that is unique and powerful and alive if we're writing from our voice that only belongs to us and it hasn't ever existed in the world before. So I
Right.
think that's really powerful, and I want to commend you for having that moment and now being willing to share what you learned from that moment with everyone else through your story.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I think it's really important to hear when people make it through that moment because, like, as an author, like, as a, like, writer on this journey, it's, like, can be lonely sometimes, right? Like, people you it's scary, when you're putting your work out in the world, you don't know what's gonna happen, but, like, knowing that people get through those moments of, like, that if we're gonna relate it to I love the hero's journey, as Jaylon knows, but, like, it's like that dark night, like, your darkest moment, and then, like, how you come out of that, it's really important to know that there are other people going through the same thing and making it through.
Right. Yeah, and I think what you said about not pretending anymore, that was a huge I think you used the phrase radical self-acceptance. I think that was a huge part of what I experienced because a lot of that struggle was trying to sort of paper over all of what was really going on underneath, and when I decided to just let go of all that was when I learned how to I stopped apologizing, I stopped pretending, I stopped
Mhm.
faking it, and I think that was a huge part of becoming able to turn in a different direction.
That's
So
awesome.
powerful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're sharing that too. That's a message that is very much needed because, as you said, life is short and we spend so much of it living for other people and living
Uh-huh.
in the roles that they give us. Um, so I think that having your book out there in the world is going to help people have this realization either earlier in their lives that they can step into their own identity and
Right.
work, live for their own story first, or, it's even women who are older will get that message and have the opportunity to be inspired, have that push to do that before it's too late. And I
Uh,
think that's so powerful.
Yeah. Do you have a plan for traditional or self-published? Because you're still in the early stages of writing your memoir, correct?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have, like, a plan for when you want it to be done, or do you have those sorts of ideas yet?
My goal is to finish it by the end of this year.
Okay.
So I've kinda made, like, 2026 the year that I actually write the memoir. The the difficult thing for me right now is that and I think this is a theme that you've probably explored before, I don't have an ending. You know, I my desired ending is, who knows when or if it will be possible.
Mhm.
So it's a little scary to be saying I'm gonna finish, my story. But I'm gonna finish this part of, whatever that memoir is gonna be where I'll know when I get to the end of it. It won't be like the end, obviously, um, but yeah, my goal is to get that done this year.
That's exciting.
Awesome. Cheering you on for this goal and also to speak to, not knowing how your story will end and saying that you're going to end it is really scary. Um, but another thing that I love to have the opportunity to help writers with is realizing that not only does story help them understand their past and give voice to their past lived experience, but knowing how to write also can shape your future. You can write your happy ending for
Uh-huh.
yourself in real life. And I think that's so awesome that you're also getting a chance to do that, and walking through that journey. It is a scary journey. It's a lot to step into, but I definitely believe in you. I believe in your story, and I think that it's going to be amazing.
Do you have plans for future books, or you like one step at a time with this memoir?
We'll see. I mean, now that I've gotten more comfortable with writing, when I first started actually sitting down and writing every single day, I one of my big frustrations was that it would take me so long to get to a point where I had something that I felt was ready to quote unquote publish, and I mean, I guess putting my stuff on Substack is publishing. Although I still go back and revise stuff that I put on there months ago. I go back and read it and I'm like, and not major changes, but just like a word here, a word there. Um, but it's gotten easier over time. So like I'm not obsessing the way that I did at the beginning where it would take like all month to get something to where I was willing to let other eyes look at it.
Mm.
Um, so now that I'm much more comfortable with getting my stories down on, figurative paper, I do have other ideas for things I want to write about. I would love to write a memoir of my teaching career, for numerous reasons. I taught all over the city of Chicago. My teaching career was really an adventure in many ways. I never stayed in any school. I've actually never stayed in any job much longer than 4 years. And in addition to being a classroom teacher, I was a coach, I was a mentor. I was once on the cover of the Chicago Sun-Times because the Chicago Public Schools fired me, along with about 750 other outstanding educator mentor coaches, because we were too expensive. So all of us tenured teachers, they fired all of us. And I was 8 months pregnant with my daughter. I was like 6 weeks away from a scheduled C-section. They tried to cancel our benefits. It was like a whole big drama. So they put me on the cover of the Chicago Sun-Times. And I ended up getting rehired in the district, and I ended up keeping my health insurance, thank God. Um, but so there's like a lot there. There's a lot. And because I was a mentor and a coach, I was in so many different schools. I've probably stepped foot in, there are approximately 6 to 700 schools in the Chicago school district. I've probably been in at least 200 of them. Um, yeah, in some sort of work capacity because I was, traveling around to different schools when I was in out of the classroom positions. So there's a whole lot there. And, over that 3 decades, so much changed in the educational system. And I kind of had a window into that. But also, my relationships with my students were such a huge part of my life. I actually, if anybody were to scroll through my Facebook friends list, I would venture to say that at least 40 of the people on my Facebook friends list are my former students, maybe more. Like I'm still in touch with a lot of them. And it's been so cool to see them go from 8-year-olds to, having families and jobs, and it's just so amazing to see all the things that they've done. And, that was a huge part of my life. And, so there's a lot there. So
Mm.
I can totally see writing a memoir of my education career.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow, that's awesome.
That is an incredible lived story for sure.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good reminder too of like so much of what you don't see on social media, like so much of our world, right, is social media. And like there's a whole human life behind that, and you're impacting real people, like your students and decades long experience. Like that is so impactful and meaningful, and like it's like remembering like we all have these stories, right? We all have um all these lived experiences, and I think like that's important to remember that like these stories are really what shape our lives and what actually impacts people, not just the, the stuff we see, on our screens. So that's a good reminder.
Definitely. I also want to take a second to go off of something that you said, Erin, and encourage, again, anyone listening, thank you so much, everyone who has joined us. We really appreciate you being here. Again, if you think of any ideas for a title for Erin's memoir, drop that in the chat before we end here soon. But I also wanted to take a moment to just say, um, as Erin kind of touched on before, it can be really hard to hit publish, or it can be really hard to start writing because you feel like you're not good enough to be able to say something the way you want to say it. But just a reminder, an encouragement. I've seen it so many times, and I love getting to encourage writers in this. Your story has impact, it has power, even imperfect. Your words, someone out there needs your words. Regardless of if they are perfect or not, we can get so stuck in obsessing over how we say something and making it perfect. But even with what you have to say now, your story is going to make a difference, and someone needs it. Yeah, say what you want to say. I love it. Yeah. So, quick encouragement to anyone listening. Um, Erin's story is an encouragement to us all, an inspiration to us all. Um, and also a reminder, we should all be writing our own stories, because even if
Mhm.
you know, you might say that you have a less interesting life experience than Erin has, but you have an experience that someone needs to hear about in order to improve their own life experience. So,
Yeah.
if you have a story that you need help writing, or you need help finding your voice through that process, or you need help editing your story, um, the story team at One Brilliant Arc, that's what we're here for. And Jess also she offers author coaching. So again, we're here just to see more stories get told like Erin's. And Erin, do you want to wrap us up with telling people where they can find you and how they can follow along this journey of you publishing your memoir?
Sure. Yeah, my Substack is the main place where everything is. And I think I can't remember what I said before we started the live and what I said after. So I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself.
Mhm.
But I when I started the Substack, I thought that I wasn't sure exactly what my focus would be. And it really has zeroed in on my relationship with my husband, who is in Cuba, who is far away, who I don't get to be with most of the time. And so I don't think that this is exactly what I envisioned when I first started it, but part of my motivation for what I'm doing with my Substack right now is also my goal to really humanize the country of Cuba, which is such an important part of my life now. It's my home, and I love it so much, and it is such an incredible place that many of us know virtually nothing about. Um, and so I actually created a second section on my Substack just specifically to write about Cuba and my experiences there. So I've got the main body of my Substack that is a lot of stories about my experiences with my husband. But then there's a second section called Love Letters from Cuba, where I just write about places that we go to and restaurants that we eat at and things like that, so that people can get more of a sense of what's really there and what it's like in Cuba. Um, and so, I'm always, I mean, I appreciate every single person who takes the time to read my work. But I especially love when I hear from people that they really enjoy, being able to visualize the experiences that I'm having there and learn something that they did not know before about a country that is only 90 miles away from us.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're doing that. Thank you for sharing that with all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna talk about memoir titles, you just said the love letters from Cuba, and I was like, that sounds like a good title to me. I would.
Yeah, it actually has been used. Yeah, so I always look at, I look things up before I decide to use them.
Yeah.
It has been used. I went ahead and used it on my Substack because there's many Substacks that have titles that have been used
Yes.
before. Um, but it was used, I believe, on a published book.
Oh,
So, but I mean, there are also published books that have same titles. So I don't know.
or yes.
But yeah, but I have thought of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sure it'll be just as good, but yes, that was definitely intriguing. I also, like, just little side note, when I many careers ago, got to work with refugees for a while, and a lot of them came from Cuba.
Oh,
So I'm
really?
also someone that's had a lot of experiences with people from Cuba, and they've been some of the most wonderful people that I've met. So yeah, it's it was a wonderful opportunity that I feel like a lot of Americans don't get, or a perspective too.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stories are powerful when we share them, and then when we take the opportunity to step into someone else's story.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a great reminder to wrap up this live session, is just take that moment to radically self-accept yourself and tell your story, because someone else needs your story to intersect with theirs in order for their story to be healed.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, I'm so excited to follow along your author journey, Erin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It really has been. I was nervous about it, but it's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a blast. We love getting to talk with authors, and you especially. You did great. No one could tell that you were nervous.
Good.
We
Yeah.
appreciate everything you shared.
And if anyone is listening and you have a story to share, you're working on a book, or you already are a published author, we do have an indie author spotlight form to fill out. So we are a little booked out, which is good. But we are so excited to help support indie authors. And I know it's a hard journey, but it's absolutely worth it. And we want to help and support as many people as possible. So we'd love to talk to you.
Thank you so much, everyone who joined us. Thank you for the kind comments and the hearts and the clapping for us. We appreciate it. We're very glad that you're here with us. Good luck, everyone, with your stories, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Erin. Bye.
Bye.